5 and welcome to today's session, our reading session, the first one for The Explorer by Katherine Rundell. This is our main text this term, and you should all have a copy of this. If you don't have it in front of you, please pause the video now and go and find it. Right then, so in today's session, our objectives are to read and summarise the events in chapter 1, which is called Flight, to make predictions about the text, and to explore the choices of language. Now we're going to start by looking at the front cover. It's very important before we start reading that we take a very good look at the front cover to try and try to find any clues that there might be about what this story is going to be about. That's why I've got the magnifying glass picture here. We're looking, a bit like detectives, looking at what those signs might be that give us an idea of what the story will be about. So, 3 questions there that I'd like you to have a think about. Are there any clues as to what the story will be about? Where do you think the story is set? What other predictions can you make about this story? So I'd like you to explore, find out what you can based on this front cover, and to predict what you can about what the book will be about. So you're trying to imagine or try to anticipate what is going to happen in this story. I'd like you to pause the video now and write down your answers to those questions. Okay, well done Year 5 for giving that a good go. We're now going to have a look at some possible answers. So here's what I came up with. Well, the title, The Explorer, suggests to me that this is going to be an adventure story. That's because explorers often like going on adventures. They like finding out about new things, new places. They're curious to find out more about a place. I think that this is going to be set in quite an exotic place, as we've got some very densely, very closely packed together leaves, brightly coloured leaves, followed also with some brightly coloured birds, which are parakeets. Now they're quite exotic. You don't really find those in England, certainly not in the wild. So I get the impression that this is going to be set somewhere other than England. And also, I predict that this aeroplane is going to be quite important to the story. The fact that it's there on the front cover in quite a central position is a clue, in my opinion, that the aeroplane is going to feature quite significantly in the story. Well done if you've got any of those ideas. Maybe you've got some of your own. Well done. Okay, so now we're going to move on to a close reading of the first page, which is page 1 of the chapter called Flight. Like a man-made magic wish, the aeroplane began to rise. The boy, sitting in the cockpit, gripped his seat and held his breath as the plane climbed into the arms of the sky. Fred's jaw was set with concentration, and his fingers twitched, following the movements of the pilot beside him. Joystick, throttle. The aeroplane vibrated as it flew faster into the setting sun, following the swerve of the Amazon River below them. Fred could see the reflection of the 6-seater plane, a spot of black on the vast sweep of blue as it sped towards Manaus, the city on the water. Okay, so in the box below we can see these key words that I've picked out here. So we've got the word swerve, vast sweep of blue, and twitched. Pause the video now and have a go at working out what you think those words might mean. And you need to use the sentence in which those words appear to help you define the vocabulary. Off you go. Okay, now that you've done that, I would like you to have a little look at the questions on the screen. First of all, where is the story set? Which characters are we introduced to? So who do we meet? What is happening on this opening page? So if you had to explain, to summarise what is happening on this opening page, how would you do it? So we're now developing our retrieval skills. We're finding these examples to answer these questions. Pause the video now and have a go at answering those questions. Okay, well done for giving that a good go. Now, as you can see, I have now colour-coded the question with the answer. This is to help me identify which answer goes with which question. Where is the story set? Well, I can see that the story is set in, it's in the Amazon rainforest, as we've got the Amazon River, and we've also got mention of the place of Manaus, which I know is in Brazil. In blue, we have the question, which characters are we introduced to? Well, we are introduced to the boy, who we find is called Fred. Fred, the boy. Also, we are introduced to the pilot, who is an adult. The pilot drives the plane. Okay, the pilot drives the plane. And what is happening on this opening page? Well, on this opening page, we have the takeoff of an aeroplane. It's beginning to rise, climbs higher up into the arms of the sky. Okay, and it is basically following the path of the Amazon River, the swerve. So that's the curve of the Amazon River, which is also described as a vast sweep of blue. So it's giving a sense of how big the Amazon River is. The airplane is going very, very quickly. So I've identified it flew faster and it's going towards the setting sun. And Fred, the boy, sat next to the pilot, is watching carefully what the pilot is doing. His fingers are twitching, so that means they're moving very quickly. Well done for answering the questions that I set and also for having a go at working out what those words mean. Right, so I want us to take a few moments now to have a little think about the setting, so where this story takes place. The previous slide, we found out that the story, on the first page of the story, we find out that the story is set in Brazil, near the Amazon River, in the Amazon rainforest. So to give you a sense of where that is, I've got an image here of the world. In orange here we have the United Kingdom, which is where we are currently. Then if we look over here, you'll see a country in green. Now that country is Brazil. So as you can see, that is a very, very long way away from the United Kingdom, thousands of miles away. Below that, we have an image of the city of Manaus, which is described as a city on the water. The reason it's described as such is because of where it is. It's right on the water's edge, isn't it? So that's the city of Manaus, which is where the plane is travelling to. The airplane that's mentioned is a 6-seater plane. So here we have a small little 6-seater plane, which means it only seats 6 people. And I've also included an image of the Amazon River sweeping its way, curving its way through the Amazon rainforest. Now, I'd like you to have a think about why the author chose this setting. Will it influence how the story develops? So in other words, will the setting shape, have an effect on how the story takes place? Pause the video now and write down your ideas. Okay, now that you've had a chance to think about and write down your ideas, I'll share with you some of my ideas. There are no right or wrong answers here. It's just to get you thinking about why an author has made a particular choice of setting. So why do I think the author has chosen this setting? Well, possibly because it's very unusual, it's very different. It is, like I said previously, an exotic setting. So that means it's got very beautiful, strange wildlife and plant life, that it's a very striking setting. That perhaps the rainforest will have challenges, will have difficulties that will challenge the characters in interesting ways. So I think that it will shape the story, it will influence how the story develops, because the characters will be put into different and challenging sorts of situations. Right, now we're turning our attention to page 3 of this opening chapter. Remember to have the book out in front of you and follow as I'm reading. The engine gave a whine, and the pilot frowned and tapped the joystick. It was almost dark when Fred began to worry. The pilot began to belch, first quietly, then violently and repeatedly. His hand jerked, and the plane dipped suddenly to the left. Someone screamed behind Fred. The plane lurched away from the river and over the canopy. The pilot grunted, gasped, and wound back the throttle, slowing the engine. He gave a cough that sounded like a choke. Fred stared at the man. He was turning the same shade of grey as his moustache. Are you all right, sir? He asked. Is there something I can do? Fighting for breath, the pilot shook his head. He reached over to the control panel and cut the engine. The roar ceased. The nose of the plane dipped downwards. The trees rose up. Okay. Now, in the vocabulary box below, I have put some other words that I'd like you now to think about their meaning, to define their meaning. First word, lurched, rose up, ceased, and repeatedly. Now, I've highlighted those words within the text, which helps you to locate them, to find them in the text. Now, use those sentences in which the words appear to help you define them. Pause the video now and write down the definitions into your books. Okay, well done Year 5 for having a go at working out what those words mean. So lurched, the plane lurched away from the river and over the canopy. It means that it moves very suddenly and powerfully. Rose up, the trees rose up. Now in order to work out the meaning here of rose up, we can also look to the sentence before. The nose of the plane dipped downwards, the trees rose up. So you can imagine as the plane is dipping downwards because the engine has been cut, has been stopped, the nose dips down and it looks as though the trees are rising up. They're not actually growing any faster, it's just that the plane is losing its altitude, so it means that the trees are increasing in size. Ceased. The roar ceased. Again, we can look to the sentence before. He reached over to the control panel and cut the engine. The roar ceased. So when he stops the engine, the pilot cuts the engine, which means that the engines stop. They stop. So ceased means stop. Then the final word there, repeatedly. If you do something repeatedly, if you repeat something, it means you do it over and over again. So the pilot, he belches violently and repeatedly. It happens over and over again. So, your main activity here. 3 questions that I would like you to answer, and they each relate to a different reading skill. The evidence that I'd like you, or the page I'd like you to focus on is page 3. Okay? So the first question, what has happened to the pilot? How do we know? Find examples in that text to help you answer. What do you think it means at the end of the extract when it says the trees rose up? What does it tell the reader is happening? And how does the writer build the excitement and tension, which is like the sense of worry in this chapter? So you can see there 3 questions relating to 3 different skills: retrieve, define and explore. Pause the video now and write down your ideas. Good luck! Okay, so now now that you've had a chance to answer those for yourself, we'll go through some of my answers. You might find that you have slightly different answers to me. That's fine, But these are the main points that hopefully you have picked up on. So what has happened to the pilot? He is very ill, very seriously, gravely ill. He's belching violently and repeatedly. He's going a grey colour. His coughing is a bit like choking, and he's losing control of the plane. So he's clearly not well at all. The next question, let me just remind myself, what do you think it means at the end of the extract when it says the trees rose up? What does it tell the reader is happening? Well, the plane is losing altitude. It means that it's dropping, it's dipping down as the engine has been cut. So as they're falling, it gives the impression that the trees are rising upwards. So they are falling very quickly, is the impression that it gives. And how does the writer build a sense of excitement or tension? Well, Katherine Rundell, the writer, uses short, dramatic sentences like the roar ceased. The passengers, as we learn on this page or in this chapter, they are all children. They are shrieking and crying. They're clearly very distressed. The pilot is very ill and he is losing control of the plane. Another way that the writer builds the sense of tension is that we, as a reader, see the situation from Fred, who is a boy as opposed to an adult. We're seeing the situation from Fred's point of view, and he is feeling very worried, very helpless. He doesn't know what to do. So those are ways in which the writer builds the tension and sense of worry. Okay, your last activity now, before the end of the session. I'd like you to predict what you think will happen next in the story. So as the chapter ended, the plane was losing its altitude. What do you think is going to happen next? Write down any ideas that you have about what will happen to the pilot and the children on board the plane. Because of course the pilot's very, very poorly. What's going to happen next? I'd like you to write down your ideas and have them ready for tomorrow's session. Now in tomorrow's lesson we're going to be looking at chapter 2, which is called The Green Dark. Now, if you can read on and read chapter 2 before tomorrow's lesson, that's great. Please do so. I would like you to try and read a little bit more of the story if you can. But if not, try not to worry too much about it, as we'll do a recap in tomorrow's lesson. Very well done for all of your hard work today, Year 5, and I'll see you tomorrow.